Okay, call this meeting to order, the Villa Park Village Board. Today's November 25th at 7 p.m. Clerk Kornecki, can you please call the roll?
It's Trustee Salella.
Here.
Trustee Kazone.
Here.
Trustee Murphy. Here. Trustee Patrick.
Here.
Trustee Tucker.
Here.
Trustee Wagner.
Here.
President Wolfett.
Here. Let's all rise for the pledge and then remain standing for a short prayer, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Remain standing. Trustee Wagner.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion. Allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace as we make decisions that might affect the residents, staff, businesses, surrounding communities, and all those that enter the village of Villa Park. And continue to remind us that all we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth, for the greater glory of you, and for the service of humanity. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Okay, the next item is public comments on agenda items. Does anyone from the public have any comments on items number 5 through 11? Anyone signed up?
No one.
Okay. Anybody else? Seeing none. Okay, then we'll go on to amendments to the agenda. Do any of the board members have any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move down to item number 5, which is appointment to boards and commissions. We have the Environmental Concerns Commission, Margaret Schieffer, and to the Community Pride Commissions, Tracy Gabriel. So do I have a motion for the appointments? Trustee Wagner?
I'd like to make that motion.
And do I have a second? Trustee Kazone?
I'll make that second.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
Okay, Trustee Patrick.
Yes.
Trustee Tucker.
Yes.
Trustee Salella.
Yes.
Trustee Murphy. Yes. Trustee Kazone.
Yes.
Trustee Wagner.
Yes.
President Wolfett.
Yes. Thank you for volunteering to be on the commissions. The clerk will come to one of your commission meetings and swear you in at that time. So thank you very much. Then we'll move on to number 6 is a budget workshop, and we'll turn it over to our finance director, Kevin Wachtel, and the manager if he has anything he wants to add to it.
Thank you, Your Honor. So this evening, we'll be talking about the operations and then the capital improvement program as well, the 5-year rolling capital improvement program. So Director Wachtel is going to take us through the proposed budget, which would commence on January 1st, 2020 and terminating, if you will, on December 31st, 2020. It is a balanced budget, and Kevin's going to take us through a number of PowerPoint slides to talk about revenues, expenditures, a little bit about pensions, and things of that nature. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, again, tonight is the budget workshop portion of the budget process. It's a multi-step process that we actually start in the summer and the end of the summer on a staff side, putting together the budget, putting together budget worksheets, then getting to the point where we are now with a presented or a proposed budget that's being discussed, and then over the next 2 meetings in December, we will have additional discussions by way of a public hearing and first and second reading of the budget ordinances, and as well as the tax levy ordinances. So thank you for the opportunity to provide this overview tonight. We'll try and provide an overview so everyone has a good understanding of the budget. The budget has been made available to the board for a number of weeks. It's been available to the public since November 11th, both online and at the Village Hall and at the library for public inspection. So just some highlights on our budget, where we kind of where we are at right now, and how we got here. We've taken quite a bit of guidance from our goal setting sessions and other discussions that staff has had, the manager has had with the village board, and setting up the board's priorities. We're trying to fund those and work those into our regular operations. This budget also has continued significant investment, capital investment into streets, water, wastewater, stormwater and stormwater infrastructure. And Public Works folks are going to talk more about that in our capital plan in a few minutes. So that funding is coming largely from a lot of bond funds, specifically in our stormwater funds, as well as our street improvement funds. We also have low-interest loans paying for some water and wastewater, and non-home rule sales tax, which is utilized for various infrastructures. This year, we will see the impacts of the first hit on the minimum wage increase that's implemented by the state. That has most significantly impacting our recreation department, specifically lifeguards and the folks that supervise those, and as well as our child care programs. We do have some investment, although it's minimal, with our equipment in our equipment replacement fund. That equipment replacement fund is funded by our rollover bonds. Tonight, later on, we're going to have a discussion about our 2019 rollover bonds, but what's going to fund the capital equipment in this budget is our 2020 rollover bonds. We will do that again next year at about this time. And as always, we focus on cost-effective and efficient service provision throughout the organization. This budget does maintain our existing services. We do have some investment planned for Jefferson Pool. Additional expenses, additional money has been budgeted for tree trimming and removals, including an additional $200,000 for contractual tree trimming. Increased investment in our sidewalk program, our 50/50 sidewalk program, as well as some money for some sidewalk on Roosevelt Road. And continued focus on economic development, especially in our key corridors, to maintain our commercial sales tax base as well as our property tax base. And as we move forward, implementation and refinement of technology so we can provide service better, and both internally and to our residents and other customers. So this is a snapshot of the revenues. This is the money coming into the village. This budget calls for about $59.3 million of money coming into the village over all village funds. No surprise, the general fund makes up about a third of that, 35% of all revenues, with wastewater and water funds coming in after that. When we look at the specific revenue sources, our major revenue sources village-wide include property tax, sales tax, service charges, as well as bond proceeds. That's, when I say bond proceeds, that means all sorts of borrowing. This year specifically, it means more on the IEPA loan side of things, but that's all lumped into that category. So one thing we've looked at quite a bit over the last few years is our interest income. For a number of years, interest income was essentially non-existent. So this chart you see in fiscal 7, 8, and 9, there was some investment income, interest income. And for the next 7 or 8 years, there was virtually none. Well, that had rebounded, but we're projecting that that's going to drop a little bit. And that's due to two major reasons. One is investment rates are down, or interest rates are down overall. But we have also spent down some bond proceeds, so we have less money to be investing to begin with. So there's less money to work for us and earn that investment income. On the expense side, we have about $69.2 million over all village funds. Again, about a third of that is the general fund for our main operating account. But the next fund that you didn't see on the revenue side is our street improvement fund. That's because we are utilizing bond proceeds to fund those projects this year. Then followed up by water and wastewater funds. When we're looking at how we're spending our funds, our money, the major categories relate to salaries and contractual and capital outlay. And a lot of that contractual, when you look at it, when you dig down a little bit deeper, that involves things like ambulance service, which would be personnel. Excuse me, not ambulance service, like garbage service would be personnel, or engineering, which would relate to capital equipment, capital outlay. So those are our major categories of expenditures. When we're looking at our 2020 budget, we first want to find out where we're going to start. And in order to do that, we look at where we're at in 2019. We project out where we're going to end this year, so we have a good basis, a good starting point when we're looking at our budget. So from the general fund in 2019, our projected ending fund balance is going to be about $9.3 million, and that equates to about 151 days fund balance on hand. During the year 2019, we're projecting about a $316,000 surplus, operating surplus for that particular year. On the revenue side, that's about 1.6% ahead of where we had budgeted, and on the expense side is about 0.2%, a little over where we thought we would, where we had budgeted. Now these were projections taken a couple months ago, so that those are projections based on known information at the time. That could vary slightly as the year closes out and as we get more information through the audit process. In 2020, the budget we're talking about, at the end of the year we have another projected fund balance of about $9.3 million, or 145 days fund balance on hand. The budget calls for about $23.4 million in revenue and expenditures. That's a difference of about $900. And on the expense side, we actually are looking at operating transfers of about $775,000. And that is used to support our parks, recreation, and swim pool funds. And we've done that for a number of years to support those programs throughout the village. When we're looking at revenue, historical revenue, you can see that is growing each year slightly over time. About a 2.6% increase this year over the 2019 projected. You see the dip in SY18. Again, that relates to the short 8-month period that we had for that year, and that will continue to show up on our financials as for the next year or so. The major changes this year, we are projecting some growth in sales tax, state income tax, liquor licenses, use tax, probably from, or mostly from the internet sales tax changes that were legislated, as well as building permits. Reductions include utility tax income and interest income. On the expense side, we do have a balanced general fund. There are no capital transfers. That means there's no transfers to our equipment reserve fund. There's no transfers to our building fund or our land fund for this year. We are maintaining existing services. We are funding what we believe are priority initiatives based on feedback we've received from the board and our previous meetings and discussions on the matter. Street maintenance, tree trimming and removals, economic development are all significant efforts this year. We're continuing operating transfers for parks, recreation, and pools. Total expenditures and transfers, $23.4 million, which is about a 4% increase over 2019. Again, that ending fund balance of about $9.3 million, with a daily cost of operations of about $64,000. That's 145 days fund balance on hand. Now, last year we had about the same amount of fund balance, but this year we have fewer days on hand because the daily cost of operation has increased slightly. In terms of vehicles and equipment, these are vehicles and equipment that are included in the budget. We do have a loader for Public Works. That expense is being shared with the water and wastewater fund. It's used by all those operations within the village. 3 police squads, 1 being paid for out of the equipment fund and 2 using DUI funds. We are continuing a contribution to our fire apparatus reserve, and we are working on a strategy to replace an ambulance. We have deferred several pieces of equipment, including Public Works vehicles, Parks tractor, fire administration vehicles, among others. And these vehicles and equipment are funded by the rollover bonds, as I previously mentioned. Several notable initiatives: additional funding for tree trimming throughout the village, additional sidewalk funding for the 50/50 program and on Roosevelt Road, major capital spending from bonds and IEPA loans, and dollars for the bike and pedestrian plan, and positioning ourselves for the future. That's looking forward and how we're investing our dollars. Strategic plan, we have had the strategic plan effort a few months ago, looking at website and technology and more customer-driven service for permits, forms, various economic development efforts as well. So last year, we had a new governor that was being seated, so we identified several issues to watch, and we've got some updates on that. This year, changes. First and foremost, the minimum wage, very challenging, especially for our recreation department, for pools and childcare, definitely increasing the cost for us to provide those services there. Revenue changes or opportunities, and we're looking at that with recreational adult use cannabis as an opportunity, but also brings with it some unfunded mandates, such as utilizing or implementing the expungements component of that law. Pensions. Pensions are a huge topic, and I've got more slides on that in just a minute. The investment consolidation is one part of the solution, but it's not the full solution for sure. Economic development, major capital projects, and village facility. Those are all items that are on our radar. So when we look at our pension contributions, this slide's looking at this graph is showing the percentage of our operations tax levy that goes to pensions compared to operations. So the red line that you see that starts at a little over 50% and continues to drop down, that is the amount of the tax levy as a percent that goes to fund operations. The blue line is the portion of the tax levy that goes to fund our pensions. And that is increasing over time. So 10 years ago, about 45% of our property tax dollars were going towards our pension contributions. This year, that's about 78%. We looked at a projection over the next several years. In 2023 is when our entire property tax levy will be going towards our pension contributions. That's about $5.3 million will be going towards our pension contributions. So our 2019 levies called for about a $3.5 million contribution to our police and fire pensions, which is almost 20% over last year. So I really wanted to get a perspective on what is the long-term projection, what is the target that we really need to be focusing on. And the current state statute requires that our pensions are funded at 90% of funded in 2040, and that's a fixed date in the statute. So that's the target that we're funding towards. If we look, when we hired a new actuary about a year or so ago, and using information that they have that actually projects out assets and liabilities over the long term, in 2040, we can identify that we're going to have a total fund assets, and that's adding police and fire together, of about $170 million in 2040. So that's really the measure that I thought was the most important, because those are dollars that are going to have to be paid to pensioners at some point in time, no matter what happens to new hires from here on out, or any changes to the law. But that is the number that will need to be paid to our current pensioners, our current employees that will be pensioners one day. When we look at the assets of the police and fire pensions right now, those total about $50.5 million. So what we're seeing is the value of the assets in our pension funds needs to increase by about $120 million over the next 21 years. So that is a sizable nut to crack, for sure. So what does that really mean? Well, we can break that into sizable chunks. We look at it, our budget on a one-year basis. We look at our tax levy on a one-year basis. So I thought, let's figure out what is the annual growth that is required on an annual basis in order to achieve that $170 million in 2040. And in order to do that, if we break it down just flat, straight arithmetic, the value of our pension funds needs to grow by about $5.7 million each year. Okay, well, where are we this year? Well, this year has been a great year when it comes to investments. The value of our pension funds assets have increased significantly this year. So far this year to date, when you look at both the police and fire pensions, they've grown about $6.2 million this year, which is great. They've had a great year with their investments, and that actually surpasses what we need each year to get that $170 million. But when I think about this is actually a banner year, what has happened over the past several years? If I look back at our last 5 years, the average annual increase or in the value of the funds has been about $800,000 a year. That's about a $5 million shortfall every single year. So 1 year of having great returns is fantastic. We would need to keep this up for the next 21 years in order to achieve that $170 million objective. So we have other additional issues and initiatives that we are looking at. Projects include parking along South Villa Avenue Business District we've been working on, maximizing the use of the village's facilities and village-owned land where possible. And as always, continuing to monitor the state of Illinois for future changes. Pension funding is significant. We are leveraging our capital bill dollars, moving some funds around to leverage those dollars to make them go farther. And stormwater projects, including rear yard drainage projects that are happening within this year's budget. Since we issued this draft budget, we have learned new information since then that will be incorporated into our final budget ordinance once they're adopted later in December. We learned that our IRMA contribution, and IRMA is our workman's comp and liability insurance provider, our contribution is about $177,000 higher than we had expected. We do have some options there that we're going to look at, but that will result in some additional cost. And we also learned within the last week that a cell tower tenant announced that they are terminating one of their leases, and that's going to be an annual decrease in village revenue by about $40,000. So depending on timing, that may not be a $40,000 impact on our 2020 budget, but it will be on an ongoing basis about $40,000 in lost revenue for our general fund. And we do have some rollover bonds later on tonight that are on the agenda that need to be finalized, and that will all be incorporated into the final documents once that's all done. So just kind of in summary, 145 days fund balance on hand projected at the end of the year. This budget does address some of our capital needs, not all. We are investing in infrastructure, looking to solve problems throughout the community and improving individuals in areas of town, their quality of life. Funding key initiatives throughout the community, trying to be as fiscally responsible as we can, leveraging capital dollars, containing and lowering costs wherever possible, cooperation among departments, and working with other governments whenever possible, and setting the stage, planning for the future. That concludes my comments on the operating side of things.
Questions on this first? Yes. Okay. Yeah, well, have any questions for Kevin on the presentation or anything with the operating portion of the budget? Yes, Steve Tucker.
As we go on what's agenda later on, will you be able to tell where those funds will be showing up on our budget? Where we'll see it, category-wise?
Are you talking about the
like the
set
pension,
aside for?
right, for if we vote tonight to go through with the 2% for pensions and the 1% to the parks, where will we see those?
So if there is a legal restriction by ordinance for the pension contribution, I'll just tell you that that's the easy part first. When that money comes in, we will make that contribution to the pension fund. So that will be an in and an out. We will likely on the other side, the rec, parks, pool facility, we will identify funds in order to deposit those funds, and those will be legally segregated, and those would have to be utilized for those purposes as it's stated in the ordinance. So we would have a line item that shows exactly where that goes. Whether
So
that's
it
a
would be
separate fund
made-
or in an existing fund, I'm not sure, but that revenue would definitely show up in a line item, and we would track the balance of that money on a monthly basis.
Okay, so there would be a line item set, if I'm understanding you correctly, there would be a line item set in either the fund under parks or the fund under rec on our budget?
Right, so if we were to put that money in, let's say we put it in the Parks or Recreation Fund, that would further restrict that money to the purpose of that particular fund. If we put it in something that's the general capital fund, which would be maybe a land and buildings fund or the capital projects fund, we would hold it in that fund for that specific purpose, but we could use it for any purpose that the board sees fit that falls under that particular category of parks, rec, pools.
Okay, so if we decided, if the board decided that we wanted is a number to only be specified to be used for the rec center and specified to only be used for the new develop of a pool, can that line item be put in there that way?
We
From
could take that
From the
one,
funds, from the 1%?
if we could take that 1/3, we could put a third in an account that's for recreation, a third that's in account for pools, and a third that's in account for, what's the other one I didn't say?
Well, it would only be 2 accounts.
We can put that into 2 separate accounts. That's certainly possible.
Okay, so it would be only 2 accounts that we're looking at. We're looking at it for future development of the swimming pools and one for the future account for the rec center. Now, is there a specification in the budget that says if we take that 1/3, that we have to follow some type of a qualification to do that?
That's not in the budget for 2 reasons. One is it's not, the board has not decided that, so it's not in the code yet, and we also don't have any
Funds to put in
Canis
it yet?
dispensary coming online, so I have no way, it wouldn't be responsible for me to put some dollars in there for a revenue that's not going to happen. If the board sets up the structure, we can set up the accounts so that they're sitting there waiting, but there wouldn't be any money going into them unless and until the cannabis dispensary came online and we actually started seeing those tax dollars, which wouldn't be for another, at the earliest, middle of next year or end of next year. Yeah.
Okay, so at that point would be when it would be determined on where we get put into the budget, if I'm understanding you right?
We would put it in I imagine that we would put it in a governmental fund, whether we set up its own fund or we put it in the existing fund. That has not been determined as yet. But we would set it up as a fund, or in a fund, or as a fund, and identify where or we would report back on a regular basis. I'd put that in my regular reporting, how much money is in those accounts.
But if I understand you correctly, that the board wouldn't decide at that point that the funds become available, where it gets put in the budget, under what line item we have to put in?
Yeah.
Okay.
I see, we had about a $900 surplus in this budget,
Yes.
but I see the stuff that just came in, looks like we've already, that's $200,000. So I guess we're probably, if we patch this budget, we're just gonna have to find that money somewhere. So somewhere else in the budget, something's not gonna get purchased. So it's the only way you're gonna find that money, so. Okay.
And I just want to clarify that, because I know you clarified that before, the daily operating amount, because we have more funds or less funds coming in, the days have gotten less that we have in surplus, correct? Or is that the right word?
Because the cost of operations, the daily cost of operation increases, even though the fund balance remains the same, because the daily cost of operations increases, that reduces the number of days.
Days we have on,
Yeah.
okay. That's what I wanted to clarify, because I know you had mentioned that to me before.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, then we'll move on. Thank you, Kevin, for all your work. Appreciate that. And we'll move on to the Public Works capital projects. You got anything to say?
I was just,
Introduce Kevin?
I would, you think?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Your Honor and Board, so the next topic is the capital improvement program, which is a 5-year rolling program. So, Kevin Mantles is going to take us through the Public Works part of the budget for fiscal year 2020 and beyond. So, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, good evening, and thank you. I'm going to go ahead and dig right into the Street Improvement Fund. Take a quick look back at 2019. It was admittedly a little bit of a lighter year for us in terms of capital improvements. Referring back to one of Kevin's slides, he mentioned that the complicated projects are the ones that remain. And so for that reason, we didn't see quite as much construction in 2019 as we would have liked, but we are gearing up for a very busy 2020. So just to recap 2019 a little bit, we did complete construction of the Princeton Avenue Improvement Project. We began construction of the St. Charles Road Bridge Improvement Project. Actually, that's getting close to wrapping up here. We should be looking at the south half achieving substantial completion in the next few weeks here. So that is shaping up to be complete by the end of the year. Beyond that, we completed a number of maintenance programs, including pavement patching, pavement marking, crack sealing, rejuvenation, with a total of over 22 miles of streets receiving maintenance or capital improvements of one form or another in 2019. So in that regard, it was still a very busy year for us in terms of the number of streets that received attention. Looking ahead to 2020, as I mentioned, a very busy year. I'm going to skip going into detail on the first bullet point there. We have a list on the following slide that goes into more detail on projects. But we will be initiating design of a number of additional referendum-funded road projects in 2020, with construction then planned for either 2021 or 2022. We're actually getting close to the end of the list of streets on the referendum program right now. Beyond that, we expect to complete annual installments of our maintenance programs, crack sealing, pavement marking, rejuvenation, and patching. We also have money in the budget to bring a new asset management platform online for the purpose of planning and tracking street improvements, so we're very excited about that. And then we also expect to continue our efforts to replace street light and traffic signal poles on St. Charles Road. As I mentioned, we do have a rather hefty program for road improvements for 2020. In addition to the 2020 street improvement project that the board approved a design agreement for at the last board meeting, we also have the Astor Myrtle project, which is currently awaiting EPA loan approval to move forward. We have the Euclid Avenue improvement project, which is actually a component of that same contract. And then we're completing design as we speak on the Charles Avenue improvement project, the College Streets improvement project, looking to get design rolling on Jackson Street, and then also finishing design on Maple Area, Michigan Avenue, Monterey, and Yale. All those projects should be breaking ground at some point in 2020. And then, as I mentioned, we have another round of maintenance activities planned with pavement rejuvenation, crack sealing, patching, pavement marking, pavement resurfacing, sign maintenance, and streetlight maintenance. All in all, we are looking at 21 streets with capital improvements planned for 2020. Total length of 6.4 miles. That does not include the $600,000 in street maintenance costs that are budgeted, but it does include a large portion of the $4.2 million in non-referendum costs and $7.8 million in referendum road costs, with a total budget for the street improvement fund of $12 million, just over $12 million in 2020. Quite substantial. And then we do have a list and a map of all the streets that are planned for improvements in the following year. So all the streets, all the projects that I outlined are encompassed here. Moving on to our capital projects funds, funds 64 through 67. These are a little bit different from the street improvement fund and from the water and wastewater funds that we'll be getting to, in that these, for the most part, do not have dedicated or reliable sources of revenue. The one exception to that is the utility sales tax that was approved by voters a few years ago by referendum, which goes into Fund 64 in the Capital Projects Fund. But aside from that, there are not a whole lot of revenue sources for these funds. For that reason, they rely heavily on corporate transfers from the general fund. We also seek grant reimbursements and grant opportunities as much as we can. Beyond that, we have a little bit of sales and lease financing, bond funding, and there is some cost sharing with residents as well. And leading into that, in Fund 64, we have the sidewalk program. As Kevin mentioned a few times, we are looking to expand that in 2020 to a much larger budget amount, so we can try and knock out some of the backlog that we've been dealing with for the past few years. We are also planning to get back to our ADA sidewalk improvements using MFT funds. That is our program where we bring crosswalks up to compliance with current ADA standards. We also will be using, as we have for the past few years, using utility sales tax funds to pay for engineering and construction of some of our water and wastewater projects. And then lastly, we continue to seek funding for bicycle and pedestrian projects to implement components of the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. Excuse me. Moving on to our equipment replacement fund, I believe Kevin covered a lot of this already. We are currently paying down 2 previous lease payments. And as Kevin mentioned, we expect to purchase 4 vehicles in 2020. 1 police unit out of the equipment replacement fund, 2 out of the DUI fund, and we do have 1 public works vehicle planned for purchase in 2020. That is all in addition to continuing to place money in the fire truck reserve for future fire truck purchase. And then we do have just a small list of other smaller dollar equipment purchases that are all reflected in the budget. The building improvement fund, also no identified revenue source, and as Kevin mentioned, we are not expecting any fund transfers in from the general fund to cover any large-scale improvements this year. So the items that are included are some additional work at Jefferson Pool, a few improvements at Iowa Community Center, and beyond that, we are simply replacing a few heaters at Fleet Maintenance Garage and 51 South Ardmore. So more of a status quo than anything else. On to Fund 68 with the stormwater revenue. The major source of revenue for this fund continues to be the stormwater fee that's assessed to residents and businesses on the monthly water bill. That is responsible for revenue of approximately $582,000 per year. In addition to that, we do have grant funding, cost sharing with residents, and we do have a small amount of stormwater detention buyout fees, excuse me, that cover reimbursements. We do have a number of ongoing projects proposed in 2020 for this fund, including the Jackson Pond Improvement Project. We do expect to move forward with design of future phases of that project in 2020 so that we can maintain momentum on that project. We also have roughly $400,000 worth of construction improvements taking place as a part of the Astor and Myrtle Improvement Project, which will include an underground stormwater detention vault to assist with drainage and stormwater in that area. We have the Drainage Assistance Program that's been mentioned a few times. And then lastly, we have a small detention area proposed to be constructed as a part of the Monterey Avenue Improvement Project. And we continue to have a number of projects in the CIP, stormwater projects, that do not have identified funding sources. Most of those are in future years, and we continue to seek funding sources for those as we move through the process, as we get closer to completing some of the prerequisites that have to happen before these can take place. But we do still largely have an unfunded list of expenses here. Moving on to Fund 82, the Water Supply Fund. The DuPage Water Commission did increase their rate to the village by 3 cents in 2019. The village board approved a 4-cent per 1,000 gallon increase, and that was then obviously passing a 1 cent increase onto the village. We are expecting that the utility sales tax that I mentioned previously will provide funding for the water fund in approximately $679,000. That'll be tweaked a little bit as we get to the end of the year and determine where our actual numbers lie. We are also proposing a $400,000 contribution from a community development block grant, which will fund a portion of the water main on North Yale. That's in addition to $2.75 million in EPA loan funding, largely for the College Streets project. And all of that added up results in a projected ending fund balance of $1.75 million. That comes out of a total operating cost budget of $4.66 million, of which water purchase is $2.75 million. So that accounts for about 59% of our operating costs. Obviously, the number one dollar amount for the village in terms of the water fund. The remainder of those operating expenses cover operation and maintenance of the system. And we also continue to be very proactive about trying to reduce our water loss. We expanded the annual leak survey, looking for areas of water loss in the system. We continue to complete meter testing and replacement to try and make our metering system more accurate and more responsive. And then we also have an upcoming project that the board approved, I believe it was the last meeting, for the FlexNet automated water meter reading system, which will further help to decrease water loss and increase revenues. Excuse me. All said and done, we have about $4.95 million proposed in terms of capital expenses and projects in 2020. Those capital items include, as I mentioned previously, the asset management software, and then we also have the Census FlexNet and Census Analytics hosting support for that automated meter reading system that I had mentioned. And then the last large ticket item that we have proposed in 2020 is painting of the Home Avenue water tower. It's been nearly 20 years since the last time that was done, and as critical of a piece of infrastructure as it is, we'd like to keep that in great shape. And so we're proposing that take place in 2020. We are looking at 3 projects with large-scale capital water main improvements. One is the Charles Avenue Improvement Project. We also have the College Streets project that I mentioned with the $2.75 million loan. And then we have the Yale Avenue Improvement Project with the $400,000 CDBG grant. Moving on to the Census FlexNet system, I'd actually like to mention that this is going to make a big difference for us in terms of staff resources, in terms of our ability to respond to issues with meter reading and high usage accounts and theft and things along those lines. This basically gives us a real-time picture into water usage in the village. Once these new meters go in place, once the system goes up, we'll be able to track usage on a customer-by-customer basis, on an hour-by-hour basis. And so if someone's stealing water, if someone is leaving a faucet on or something like that, and we're seeing excessive usage, we'll be able to dig into those numbers and actually see where those usages, where those high usages are taking place, so that we can dig in and take care of those in real time. Beyond the capital beyond the capital improvements, we do also expect to complete repairs as a part of some of our larger capital projects, including Astor Myrtle, Euclid, Maple area, Michigan, and Monterey. And beyond that, we also expect to continue moving forward with engineering for future years' projects as well. Moving on to Fund 83, the wastewater fund. This fund has not seen a rate increase in some time. We did not submit for a rate increase along with the water that DWC enacted earlier this year. The last rate increase here, unfortunately, was in January 1st of 17. And so for that reason, in addition to the monthly wastewater funds, the other revenue source for this is the combined sewer separation funding, which we see about $290,000 per year. Beyond that, we're using primarily EPA loan funding, which has got 2 loans currently approved. One is for combined sewer separation as a part of the Astor and Myrtle project, and the other is for master plan sewer rehabilitation projects, which are going to be completed as a part of the 2019 sewer rehabilitation program. And then this fund is also expected to see some utility sales tax transfers in to cover expenses. Right now projected around $487,000, which again will be tweaked before the end of the year. And we're looking at projected ending fund balance for the wastewater fund of $852,000. The operating expenses for the wastewater fund, maintenance of the collection system itself. We also have improvements and repairs at the wet weather flow treatment facility, including a proposed capital replacement plan to take place this year. We're currently paying back 4 EPA loans, and then we also have some internal repayments back to the street improvement fund for Storm Sewer and Park Boulevard that is nearing completion. Just a little bit longer list here. As I mentioned, we have the wet weather flow treatment facility rehab. We have some pumps there that need to be replaced. In addition to that, we have the sewer reimbursement program where residents are reimbursed for improvements to their private sewer services. And we also are proposing some improvements this year to the supervisory control and data acquisition, what we call our SCADA system. That's a system that basically provides control and oversight over all of our pumps, our village infrastructure, and things of that nature. We also have road project components, sewer road project components of our capital improvement plan, including Astor Myrtle, Charles Avenue, College Streets, Euclid Avenue, Jackson Street, Maple Avenue, Michigan Avenue, Monterey Avenue, and Yale Avenue. And as I had mentioned previously, the 2019 sewer rehabilitation program. Moving on to combined sewer separation. This is a major component of our construction efforts for 2020. We will be separating existing combined sewers on a number of streets in town, including Astor and Myrtle project, the Charles Avenue project, Euclid Avenue, Maple area, Michigan, Monterey, and then we will be looking forward to design of projects for 2021 and beyond as well. And this is a list of all of the proposed combined sewer separation projects, not just for 2020, but for future years as well. So you can see we've got roughly $20 million worth of combined sewer separation proposed. And this would be in the next 5 years. And these are expected to be covered by EPA loan funds through the Wastewater Pollution Control Loan Program. It's a quick overview of the CIP. Including the 5 years and beyond, we have about $90 million programmed. So it's a very ambitious program. If you look at the list, we have the bulk of that in the sewer separation columns, as well as referendum and stormwater. And so those are the major components of our projects that are going on right now. And then just a quick overview map of the program by year. I know the legend's a little bit difficult to read on the PowerPoint. The red is what's been completed, and beyond that, each year is represented by an individual color. Blue being 2020. So as you can see here, again, 2020 is going to be a very ambitious, very productive year for us. So we're looking forward to getting that rolling. With that, that's the end of my presentation. So if there's any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Any questions on the capital improvement projects? Thank you very much. Good job. I just want to go back to the operating budget a minute. My personal, on this operating budget, enjoy it, because I don't think we're going to see this many projects in the future. With the obligations that are ahead of us, we had a good investment year on the pensions, the $6 million. If we have to come up with $5 million a year, every year, to make that 90% in 21 years, a number of things are not going to be in there next year. So, yes.
Do we have a copy of those transparencies?
Of the presentation?
Yeah, we can get you those.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, Kelly will give them to you. Anybody else? If not, we'll move on.
I have just one
Trustee
question.
Tucker.
On your capital improvement thing you gave us, as you spread out the numbers, is that be across the page for us to understand? You know, I know you put everything in columns, because I know it's going to lead, some of these projects are going to lead out from 20 to 2024. The projects that we have completed are the ones that we have no estimated costs in this booklet that you have done, that you had mentioned.
Well, actually, typically the completed projects are not included in the book at all.
Not in here at all.
Correct. So anything that is actually 100% behind us, we omit. We drop it from the list. And this would only include projects that have some uncompleted component as of right now.
Okay, because I was noticing some of the projects, there is nothing on 2020, but
That's
they're in the
correct.
book. They just haven't totally been fully completed, is what, but we
That
don't
could be
have
the
any
case,
costs in
or-
2020.
Well, it's also possible that there are projects that don't have a component proposed for 2020, but do for future years. So if you
Right.
look to
Okay.
future years, you might see a dollar amount in 2021 or beyond.
Right, because the Plymouth Street water main project from Addison to Ardmore, I know
Correct.
that's a project that's not going to start until 2022.
Correct.
But if we have completed it, it is not in here.
That's
any longer,
correct.
Correct,
That's
okay. So
correct.
we've dropped it out of here, so
Yes.
these are just the future projects going to be incurred that haven't happened or aren't starting in 2020 in here, but they are in here for our future use.
Correct. If it's completed or expected to be completed by end of 2019, it's not in this book.
Okay.
If it's ongoing, if it currently has some work started but not finished, it would be in here. If it's expected not to start until 2020 or beyond, it's also in here.
It's in here, okay. Because I know some of these projects started in 2018 and 2019, so, but they're just standing, they're in here because we're continuing on, because there's still some expenses that have laid out.
Correct,
That's how it's-
correct. For the
okay.
projects that have already begun but are not completed yet, we show prior year expenses to give a bigger picture of the financials that have gone into this project.
Okay.
So that we're not just dropping off previous years and making it look as though this is a $2 million project, when in fact, it's actually $6 million. We're just happen to be in the last year of a
Last
three-phase
year
project.
of it, okay, thank you. That's what I wanted clarification on.
Okay?
Most of the projects that you presented, they have a designated revenue source.
Yes.
In the water, stormwater, those are all revenue that's gathered through your water bills. And so that's why these will probably get done, except for maybe a little help with some of the road projects. Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you very much, Kevin, for all your work on that. And Kevin, thank you for your work, so. And we'll move on to the consent agenda, number 7, which is a bill listing for the week of November 1st and November 11th and November 18th, 2019, into a total amount of $530,169.13. And item 7B is the minutes from the board meeting held on November 11th, 2019. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda? Trustee Wagner?
I'd like to make that motion.
Trustee Tucker?
I will second that.
Any questions? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Kazone?
Yes.
Trustee Silvella?
Yes.
Trustee Murphy?
Yes.
Trustee Patrick?
Yes.
Trustee Tucker?
Yes,
Trustee Wagner?
Yes.
President Volpus?
Yes. Okay, item 8 is the first reading of an ordinance of the Village of Villa Park, DuPage County, Illinois, amending the Villa Park Municipal Code relating to the use of cannabis. Manager Keener.
Thank you, Your Honor. At the regular meeting of the village board held on October 28, 2019, the board voted to proceed with the necessary amendments to village code to accommodate changes to state laws that relates to the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. The ordinance being considered modifies Villa Park Municipal Code to regulate the use of cannabis in Villa Park in accordance with state law. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, this is a first reading only, so we don't need a motion. It's just for discussion. Any questions or comments from the village board? Okay, Trustee Tucker.
yeah, I just regulation I and J on this. If I'm reading it correctly, we are, or is the state making these applications, but we are stating in those two components that if children or young are involved, it is not allowed in the house, is that correct?
Run that by me again.
According to I and J on it, it sounds like the recreational cannabis cannot be used in a home where children are present or living in the home.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. And that that the case would be the same for they would not be eligible to grow any on that line either,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, then we'll move that for a second reading at our next board meeting in December. Number 9 is the second reading of an ordinance, second and final reading of an ordinance of the Village of Villa Park, DuPage County, Illinois, imposing a municipal retailer occupation tax on the sale of cannabis. Manager Keener.
Thank you, Your Honor. At the regular board meeting of the village board held on October 28, 2019, the village board voted to proceed with the necessary amendments to village code to accommodate changes to state law as it relates to the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. The ordinance being considered imposes a 3% municipal retailer's tax on the sale of cannabis. As discussed at the November 11, 2019 board meeting, 2/3 of the tax dollars received from the collected 3% municipal retail tax would be directly applied to the village's police and fire pension funds, while 1/3 would be directly applied to fund parks, a recreation center, and a pool. The board also opted to remove the proposed timeline for reevaluation of the sales tax distribution. Thank you, Your Honor.
Do we have a motion for the second reading? Trustee Wagner?
I'd like to make that
Do we
motion.
have a second? Trustee Patrick? Okay, any questions or comments from the board? Trustee Cielo?
Well, I'd like to see the 3%, remain 3% for the police and fire pension funding. I'm okay with the reevaluation of the time. I'm okay with that, but I'd like to see 3% in its entirety pension funding.
Would we need a motion to that, if you
I'd
want
like
to make that motion?
I would like to make that motion.
And the motion, state the motion.
I would like to remain whole at 3% of the retail tax towards police and fire pension.
Okay, do we have a second?
Mr. President, I'll second it.
Trustee Cazone, a second. Any questions or comments on the motion to amend? Well, you all know my comments already. I think with what we've seen on the pension obligations coming in 21 years, every little bit that we can put against the pension would be beneficial for our budget down the line. Because, you know, I really, I've been doing some reading on what some communities who aren't able to make those pension payments. They're selling off assets like their sewer systems and their water lines and everything. And I really, you know, I'm afraid that in 20 years or 18 years, if maybe even less, we're going to get into that situation. So every little bit we can do now, I think would be advantageous for us in the long run. But I'll go along with whatever the board decides. And then that'll probably be the last I talk about this. So, okay. So we have a first and a second. Any more questions? So then we have to have a vote on that amendment. So we have a roll call, please.
Sure. Trustee Wagner,
No on the amendment.
Trustee Salella,
Yes.
Trustee Murphy,
No on the amendment.
Trustee Cazone,
Yes.
Trustee Tucker,
No.
Trustee Patrick,
No.
President Boltis.
Yes, so that fails, and now we'll move on to, back to the original motion. Do we have any other comments or questions on that? Okay, seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Okay, Trustee Wagner,
Yes.
Trustee Salella,
No.
Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Cazone,
No.
Trustee Tucker,
Yes.
Trustee Patrick,
Yes.
President Boltis.
Yes, with that motion passes, and that'll be our new taxes on the cannabis. So, and we'll move on then to number 10, which is ordinance. An ordinance providing for the issuance of $650,750 general obligation limited tax bond series 2019C of the Village of Villa Park, DuPage County, Illinois, for the levy of a direct annual tax to pay the principal of and interest on said bonds. Manager Keenan.
Thank you, Your Honor. In 2017, the village issued alternate revenue bonds to refund TIF-3 debt certificates as part of the strategy to address insufficient TIF-3 revenue. These alternate revenue bonds are to be funded by rollover bonds issued each fall, which are then paid back using our non-home rule debt service extension base. The rollover bonds were competitively bid, with Park Ridge Community Bank providing the lowest rate at 1.83%. The ordinance will be updated with the bid results in advance of the board meeting this evening. Thank you, Your Honor.
Do you have a motion for the ordinance? Trustee Cazone?
Mr. President, I'll make that motion.
Do you have a second? Trustee Wagner?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Trustee Salella,
Yes.
Trustee Tucker,
Yes.
Trustee Patrick,
Yes.
Trustee Cazone,
Yes.
Trustee Wagner,
Yes.
Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
President Boltis.
Yes. Item 11 is a resolution of the Village of Villa Park, DuPage County, Illinois, approving final change order number 2 to the contract with Aqua Contractors Corp. of Elmhurst, Illinois, for construction of the Princeton Ave Improvement Project for a net deduction in the amount of $25,119.27. Manager Keener.
Thank you, Your Honor. The village has a contract with Aqua Contractors Corp. of Elmhurst, Illinois, for a project commonly known as the Princeton Avenue Improvement Project. Proposed final change order number 2 consists of the final balancing of contract quantities as measured in the field. The net amount of this proposed final change order number 2 is a deduction of $25,119.27 for an adjusted final contract amount of $878,145.34. Thank you, Your Honor.
Do I have a motion for the resolution? Trustee Wagner,
I'd like to make that motion.
do I have a second?
I'll second.
Trustee Kazon, not Kazon, Sayala? Okay. Any questions or comments? Trustee Tucker.
That change order 1, was that an increase, if I'm right? Was that an increase in the budget the first time?
I think that was a deduction.
Was that a decrease
That was a
also?
deduction, I'm pretty sure. Was in our literature that we received,
Right.
item number 11. Did you? Yeah, it's in the information you received. It was $11,735. Change order number 1 was a minus.
That was a deduction too, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Anyone else? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Murphy?
Yes.
Trustee Kazone?
Yes.
Trustee Patrick?
Yes.
Trustee Wagner?
Yes.
Trustee Sillella?
Yes.
Trustee Tucker?
Yes.
President Bolfus?
Yes. Item number 12 is public comment on non-agenda items. Clerk Konecki, does anyone have signed up?
Yes, I have Joe Amore, first of all.
Okay, Joe.
Good evening. In 2018, the Village of Villa Park adopted a bicycle and pedestrian master plan. Within the recommendations of that plan, a stated recommendation was an establishment of a bicycle, pedestrian, and transit advisory subcommittee. I'm here to announce that that subcommittee has been formed. The members include myself, Trustee Wagner, and Mary Ann Greco. We met last Thursday here for a housekeeping session to establish our duties. I was named subcommittee chair. Trustee Wagner was named subcommittee vice chair, and Mary Ann Greco was named secretary. We can announce that we will be meeting in January, an hour before the Environmental Concerns Commission meeting, and we encourage members of the community to join us, to advise us and help us propose recommendations to the Environmental Concerns Commission for our village. Within the body of the bicycle and pedestrian master plan, on page 14, under the Villa Park Station Area Plan, a part of it was proposed, it reads in part, a pedestrian tunnel under the railroad tracks. I've appeared privately before the board to encourage their efforts to secure this vital project. And I wanted to announce today that I saw on the morning news on Channel 9 that Glen Ellen was announcing that they had received a $14.4 million grant towards the establishment of a new metro station and a pedestrian underpass where none had ever existed. When researching that article in the Daily Herald, I actually found a previous article from earlier this year where they talked about wanting to secure funds for this project. I brought copies of that for the board. I apologize if I didn't bring enough of both articles, and I encourage them to read it and to redouble their efforts to try to secure funding for this vital project. One of the elected representatives that was supposed to be there at the announcement today was Sean Caston. All our representatives are back in district. I'm sure Congressman Krishnamurthy would be very happy to take calls that were non-impeachment related, especially with an election year coming up. Infrastructure projects are always on their mind. And we hope that you continue your efforts to secure this project. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and I think that's something, underpass is really something we have to work on, so, but it's going to take time, as you know.
Yes.
And a lot of money, a lot of grants.
Yes.
So we'll leave that up, your committee's going to be working on that, right?
We'll be working on that and other things.
Good.
Pace, some of the other issues that we've tasked ourselves to look at. Pace routes, organizing activities around Bike to Work Week, Bike to School Day, and seeking bicycle-friendly certification for the village. But amongst other things, like I said, we're encouraging members of the community to join us, and we're happy to get their input.
Good. Thank you. Hope we get some volunteers. Who else do we have, Roseanne?
I have Pete Zanayed and another Pete DeMay here together about cannabis.
Okay.
Cannabis business.
Hello, my name's Peter Zanay, and I came here to introduce myself to everyone. I'm looking to open up a cannabis business in Villa Park. I expect this business to bring in about $500,000 of tax revenue and provide about 15 jobs, all of which will provide health insurance and at least $40,000 a year. Just came here to answer anyone's questions. It's going to be located at 743 West North Avenue. That's where our LOI is right now. And I just wanted to introduce myself to everybody and make sure everyone's concerns were addressed. So I'll be back there until the end of the meeting.
Well, we're well aware of cannabis. We've been a lot of time talking about that. So I don't know if I can tell you, but you're number 3 or 4. So there's a number of the dogs in this race. So man, one guy said we'd maybe $20 million, in sales. So that sounded pretty good. So, but yeah, we do have some we're talking to, and I can't make any promises, but I got your emails, so keep you in mind. If we let the other Pete, he's got something there.
Good evening. My name is Pete DeMay. I work for a union called Workers United. We're an SEIU affiliate, and we represent workers in the manufacturing industry.
You two are together?
Yeah, we're together.
Okay.
So I'll be brief.
Okay.
And here in Villa Park, we represent workers at Mickey's Linen, and we represent Hart Schaffner Marks workers in the area as well. And I just want to, I'm here in support of Peter Zanayed, because he's one of those rare entrepreneurs and employers who has embraced the concept of unionization at his workplace. He's going to provide living wage, middle-class jobs with good, high-quality health insurance. I think he's an Illinois-based cannabis entrepreneur, as opposed to many others that are coming in from out of state. He's committed to local hiring, and I think he'd be a great addition to the neighborhood. And I just encourage anyone to talk to Peter about his concept and consider the quality of jobs that cannabis entrepreneurs are actually bringing to the neighborhood. Also, Peter very much wants to listen to everyone here about what sort of concept would fit best with Villa Park. He definitely wants to collaborate, and he wants to do well by the village. So I encourage folks to consider Peter when they are looking at cannabis businesses to bring to Villa Park. Thank you.
Now, 423 North Avenue, is that on the corner of Lincoln and North Avenue by the Safari Land?
I thought it said 743.
743, by the Safari Land. Okay. That empty lot there?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Anybody-
That's all. I
That's
don't
it?
have anyone
Anybody
else
else?
yet. No one else.
Any other questions you have for him? No?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the clerk's report.
Yeah. I have no report, thank you.
Okay. And we'll move down to the trustees' report. We'll start on my left with trustee Murphy.
Trustees report. A couple things. Just want to mention how proud I think we all are of our Willowbrook Warriors for what a great season they had. And we were all out there, and we're in there for you, and we're really looking forward to our next season. So thank you for giving us a great season this season. We're very proud of each and every one of you. Thank you to Public Works because they were out there rocking out our sidewalks this week. And it was my understanding it was going to be about 3 days. They were going to do the whole village, and I see all those horses up and all this new concrete, and it just makes me really happy. So thanks for all of that. I know a couple of those days we didn't have the greatest weather either. Happy to see we were able to get it in pretty much under the wire. Hopefully we'll get it all in before we see any more bad weather. That, and I wish a happy and safe Thanksgiving to all of our staff, all of our residents, and everybody else that's out there watching. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Tucker.
I just want to branch on to what she said and wish everybody a happy and safe Thanksgiving in the village and our staff. And I also want to say bravo to our 2019 Willowbrook High School football team. You may be disappointed on your thing, but as a village, you accomplished something that hasn't been done since 1975, so take that into consideration. Willowbrook Pride is really happy with what you did because you brought out a lot of pride in this village that we, needed. And you also brought out the 1975 team. Back to halftime. It's been a long time since I've seen half of those people.
Not the cheerleaders, just the team. Where was I?
So that was a thrill to have them all back in town, too. So
Fun.
Trustee Wagner.
Thank you, President Poltis. Just a couple things. I had an opportunity to go to the ribbon cutting for Al Reyes, is a takeout and catering establishment in that strip mall adjacent to McDonald's. And I think we're going to have a new gem in our community because the food there is just delicious. It's Middle Eastern food, and if you want to take a little culinary adventure, I'd encourage you to try Al Reyes out. It's very good. And I know you're going to mention Joyful Traditions, but I want to also mention that on the same night that Joyful Traditions will take place, Friends of the Library will have a St. Nick's market at the library going on concurrently with Joyful Traditions. So after you had your fun at Joyful Traditions, go over to the library and look at some of the craft vendors that are there. And I also want to wish everyone in the community a happy Thanksgiving. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee Patrick.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. We talked about Joyful Traditions. Last week, Alicia Bailey and myself, we lit up 82 Christmas trees, and there are still some up for adoption if you're looking to adopt a tree and decorate one for Joyful Traditions. So if you would like that, go ahead and contact Alicia Bailey at the the Villa Park Chamber of Commerce. And lastly, again, I just wanted to wish everybody a happy and safe Thanksgiving.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Ciala.
I'd just like to also say have a happy Thanksgiving and a safe one at that. That's all I have.
His own?
A couple things. The Community Pride Commission, which normally would be meeting this week, is not going to meet, obviously, because of the Thanksgiving holiday. And also, I'd like to thank or wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. And a great way to start it is to do the annual turkey trot in Elmhurst, which will be, registration is from 6:30 to 8:45 at the Elmhurst College Gym. And the race starts at 9 o'clock sharp with the flyover with Lima Lima, and also Jim Corneliuson doing the national anthem. So if you want to get some exercise in before you eat a lot of turkeys, stop out there.
It sounds like the weather's going to be nice.
Should be good.
So.
Should be good.
Okay. The only thing I have is a couple things. Congratulations to Willowbrook, too. What's it been, 45 years, you mentioned, Cheryl? So.
yeah, 1975 was the last time we made
long
it that
time.
far.
So, yeah, and what a crowd. That was a lot of people there, so that was great. They were cars parked all over the place. So, appreciate that, their efforts. Also, I probably think some of you have seen the flashing stop signs around town by some of the schools and on Villa Ave Business District. Those were placed strategically in those locations, especially around the schools, Albright Middle School and the high school, and one's right here on Villa And those were all, we got those with a grant. So if everything's, village is wasting their money on flashing signs, we got a grant for that. So that's what covered that cost. Also, we were talking about restaurants being open. I was over at Bulldog Ale House this last weekend. They're open now, and they'll be glad to see you. And it's very, very nice over there. Nice remodeling job. And also right next door, across in the same shopping center, is Super Taco Morales is going to be opening in about the next week. So couple new places to eat in Villa Park, and feel free to go over there and spend your money in Villa Park. So, and again, Joyful Traditions has been mentioned, but that'll be on the 7th. Do you have something else, Trustee Murphy?
I might. I believe that this upcoming Saturday, which is the 30th, is Small Business Saturday. And there are all kinds of things going on. I believe there are some things going on Villa Avenue, Pioneers having all kinds of treats and goodies. There are several locations throughout our Villa Avenue area and others. So keep our small businesses in mind on Saturday and go out there and check out everything that's happening, I know for sure, at Pioneer.
Okay, so then Joyful Traditions, like I was saying, is on December 7th. That's a week from this coming Saturday. And then I'd like to say, again, thank you, and have a happy Thanksgiving to everybody in the community. Like everybody said, give thanks for all the blessings that you have, and stay safe for the holiday. So we'll move on. That's all I have. We'll move on to the manager's report.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor, except everyone just please have a safe and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. The next item is executive session. We don't need one of those, so we'll cross that off the list, and then it'll be on to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. President, I'll make the motion.
Trustee Kazan, do I have a second? Trustee Wagner?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same? Okay, we're adjourned.